I don't know anyone that doesn't have self-talk, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I think this impacts every human being on the planet.
And it's a curious thing, too, because we talk to ourselves in ways that we would never let anybody else talk to us. There are people who are in our lives and we have enabled them to create those darker, uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
And we keep giving away the power, letting their comments, which we can almost come to expect, get in there.
Welcome back to Unapologetic Rabble-Rousers. I'm DocShellie.
And I'm Carla Lewis. We're into episode 49.
Holy moly.
We did a lot on bullying. And then we did something on self-worth, a couple of episodes on that.
Yes, we did.
So
and they were excellent, if I don't say so myself.
Unapologetically, right?
That's right.
Okay. And when we were talking to get ready for this episode, the notion of self-talk came up as probably a pretty strong follow-on to this notion of bullying and self-worth, because those kinds of things are going to be fuel for the conversations we're having in our heads.
Yeah, and I don't know anyone that doesn't have self-talk, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I think this impacts every human being on the planet.
It's a curious thing, too, because, and I did a little bit of this on my Facebook Live on the topic, that we talk to ourselves in ways that we would never let anybody else talk to us.
A lot of people do that, yes.
And I'm going to borrow a phrase, it's fascinating to me that we can be so rough on ourselves and get very, very good at doing that. So let's talk about what's going on with this whole self-talk thing.
Yeah. Why do you think that people talk to themselves the way they wouldn't talk to their friends?
Or let their friends talk to them. Right?
That too.
Wouldn't even stand for it. I'm not sure that I understand why I do it, but when I do it, there isn't anything I gain from that. It's like I'm doing some flagellation, some form
Flagellation? That's a 25-cent word.
Thank you.
That might be a 50-cent word.
I don't know. We're getting a raise
Sorry.
in Medicare come January, so I'm spending it ahead of time. Probably a quarter's worth. But it's like there's something about there's an adult voice inside that starts to just reach out, and it's very rarely is it in support. It's usually in judgment. It's usually something to do with what an idiot. That was my mother's favorite word, you idiot. Not that she used it on me a lot, or maybe she did, and that's why it's so comfortable for me. But by calling self a name and talking about how inadequate or unskilled or whatever it might be, it's so much easier than to say, wow, that was good. I really did a good job right there. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. It's interesting to me because I certainly have the inner critic, but it's a much quieter voice than my neutral critic or my hell yeah, I got this. I don't know what to call it. My positive self-talk, I guess. I think a lot of it stems from childhood, right? We're told no all the time. I even find myself to the dogs. No. Get off of that. Stop doing that. So you think about as kids, we hear a lot of no. We hear a lot of corrections, which are meant to keep us safe. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, it seems like the majority of the world focuses on the negative. It's easy to do.
But it's interesting you bring up that point about as children, when we're not really having these conscious thoughts of judging the input we're getting from the parent.
Right.
We're trained that no is it, whatever it is, stop. Just no. And then it gets into a point where now no is because I have had a thought and made a request. And the answer is no. And as we grow in our ability to apply logic and inquiry, even as children, no goes from being a signal that really doesn't have any particular meaning, but it says there's a behavior that needs to stop. And then it goes into now we're casting judgment about something that I wanted or I needed or I wanted to ask, and I'm told no.
And I think children are meant to be seen and not heard. I mean, all those sayings.
Yeah.
I vividly remember I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. I was a little kid. And we went to an event, we being my parents and I went to an event, and there was a gentleman who was the CEO of Lionel Trains. And he had this amazing collection of Lionel trains. I loved trains when I was a kid. And I was standing in this room and I was just in awe. And Mr. Kuhn was standing next to me. And I'm asking him 1,000 questions about the trains. And he stood there with me and answered every single one of my questions. And some muckety-muck came in and said, Mr. Kuhn, you're wanted out in the gallery and so-and-so wants to talk to you. And he said, I'll be there in a minute. I'm talking to the young lady. I never forgot that. I was the most important person in that room, and I was just a kid. But the way he was just engaged with me and kept me in conversation and wasn't going to let someone else pull him away until we were done just meant the world to me. But I've never forgotten he was probably one of few adults who at that point in my life didn't tell me to be quiet. I don't have time for you. You ask too many questions.
Yeah.
And I just never forgot how that made me feel. It was really cool. But I think like when you connect it to the self-talk, right? It's that moment was, I'm worthy. You know, even as a little kid, it was like, hey, this really cool man who's a muckety muck muck, big muckety muck muck, took time to have a conversation with me.
And I have been at that museum. The gentleman lived in my community. Okay. So I attended an event there. And you can't help but, especially when you got into the train room.
Yeah.
And the little model cars and trucks and such. Of course, he had the gorgeous full-size vehicles. That was an amazing collection. But to get into that room with all of those trains, he probably felt like a kid just standing amongst all those things. And they had these layouts. I mean, there were complete countries represented. It was just phenomenal. But what a wonderful memory to hold that an adult, that a man was telling somebody else they can wait.
Yeah.
Because I'm having an important conversation with Michelle here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think like those moments just stick with you, and it changes the self-talk versus I don't have time for you. You're not important. I have better things to do.
I'm done with you. You've overextended your welcome.
Exactly. But I think one of the things that I learned a few years ago when I was studying positive psychology, and you were gracious enough to join me on that journey, was to give your self-critic a name and to give that judge a name. And so I call mine the grifter. It's those little thoughts, because my negative self-talk is pretty minimal, but when it comes in, it sneaks in on me, and it's like the grifter. He just keeps coming, just little here and there, and then all of a sudden, bam, here's the grifter.
Yep.
So I talk back to the grifter. I'm like, no, not today, grifter.
That's interesting. I remember mine was Roseanne Barr.
Yes.
Because the voice I would hear, and I'm delighted to report that I'm pretty much eradicated her from my life. And it was Roseanne because there was just something so disrespectful and ugly. And I'm not saying that she is ugly. I'm saying that she had a humor that was biting. And the first time I ever saw her was on a television comedy show, and she was standing on the stage doing her monologue, eating Cheetos, and she was just stuffing these Cheetos into her face, and they were just pieces of them were coming out while she's doing her monologue. And so that was actually the image when we did that work. My inner critic was Roseanne Barr spitting bits of Cheetos.
That's hilarious.
It was actually quite ugly. And I'm really glad that we worked on that.
Yeah.
I don't have the same kind of childhood memory as you. about that being aware of some kind of like self-talk issue or opportunity, because mine came from, there's this really seriously significant event that happened when I was 10, and it wasn't anything awful and ugly about it, except that I knew I was right in what I was saying, and my father was telling me I was wrong. And I knew I was right because I knew that multiplication was fast addition and division was fast subtraction. And he argued the point with me. And that was the very first time I'm aware of the fact that I agreed to disagree. While not saying it that way, I just said, okay. And I walked away, but I knew. And I was talking to myself. You know you're right, Carla. You know you're right. And that's okay, because you know you're right. Now, it did scar me forever, but...
Not bitter anymore.
No, not. But
how fascinating, though, that you had the positive self-talk of, I know I'm right. It's okay.
yes.
Let him think what he needs to think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I credit my mother with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to, like Mother's Day next year, we should do an episode about your mom. She's just an amazing human being. I wish I would have met her when she was still with us.
All moms are amazing human beings.
They are, but your mom was like cutting edge.
Yeah.
I just,
thank you for
we'll
that.
share more about her later.
Thank you.
When you think about your self-talk, do you have more negative self-talk or more positive self-talk, or is it neutral?
That has shifted. I think I would say probably neutral to, is it positive when I'm sitting there saying, okay, what are you learning from this? Versus I'm not saying, okay, stroke you. but the neutral to positive, neutral to supportive, neutral, because as soon as I hear or sense that I'm getting that mom's voice saying, you idiot, then I laugh at it and say, okay, no, we're not going there. So I'd say neutral, just sort of an inquiry kind of thing versus any kind of judgment, just looking at whatever might be the thought that I'm processing and then be able to say, okay, this is where we're going to go with that. But the critical nature of it has diminished dramatically. Is it because I just don't give a shit anymore what other people think, or that I've just stopped trying to beat myself up over things that don't go the way I thought they would or should? I don't know. But more neutral, supportive, and probing for what's really going on, as opposed to finding more ways to kick myself in the ass.
So more like balanced and objective then.
Oh, what a nice adult way of saying it. Yes.
Once in a while, I come up with some good stuff.
How about for you?
I would say I probably lean more, for sure, more neutral and that balanced and objective to encouraging and affirming, I think. I guess it depends on what it is too, but in general, I would say more, for sure, more positive and neutral. Rarely do I get the negative self-talk going. I've learned how to shut it down very quickly, but I also always look for the lesson in the mistakes, because we all make mistakes. We're human beings. We're going to screw it up. And so I'm all about learning from that and moving on. So the negative self-talk doesn't creep in very often. I don't know that it really ever has. I've always been pretty, I don't know. I think I wrote in a chapter in this book that we've both contributed to. I wrote something about my mom raised me and my brother. He's 8 years older than me, but it was like there was no, you can't do that because you're not a boy. You can't, like, you can do anything your brother can do, and you can probably do it better. Kind of an attitude. So it was like it was like, you can conquer the world if you want to. Like, do you, and don't let anyone get in your way. So I think a lot of that early, what do you call it? Like coding has definitely, has definitely helped with that, I think. And then it's interesting though, because I think we talked about this a couple podcasts ago, where certain people who just continuously beat you down do make you start to question that self-talk a little bit. And it's like, well, am I good at this? I think I am. I feel like I am. A lot of people tell me I am, and I love it, but this person just thinks I'm.
I think it's really important to recognize that there are those people. And I think this came up a bit in the bullying episodes. And in fact, gaslighting and other things. But there are people who are in our lives and we have enabled them to create those darker kind of uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
And we keep giving away the power by letting their comments, which we can almost come to expect, actually get in there. Almost like trying to pry open a door that, no, I really don't want you going in there.
Yeah.
So I think when we know that there's somebody that does that and that can trigger that in us, what's the first thing we're going to ask is, what is it? Why is it I'm giving away my power to this person? I know when they come this way or they start talking about what they're going to talk about that I get triggered. So I have a choice. And that's the kind of talk I got going on in my head, saying, okay, oh, here it comes again. Now, what are we going to do about it this time? It's not about being able to succumb to what it is that they trigger, to those doubts that you were talking about. But how do we get to that point? How do you get to that point of the courage, maybe just starting with the interest of being able to interfere with a pattern that has become well-worn?
Yeah, and when it first starts, I'm thinking of a situation that I had in particular. When it first starts, there's just no caving into it. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm fine. But it just keeps coming and coming and coming with every interaction. And you can't help but not interact with the person because it's part of your job. That it's almost like the dog that just keeps coming back for more abuse. But you don't have the choice to go back. If it were my choice, I wouldn't go back. But sometimes you don't have that choice.
Right. And
then it's just constant. And so even the strongest voice in your head starts to go, well, maybe they're onto something.
Excuse me. Well, at that point is when I want to be able to say, I need to excuse myself from this right now. And I know we were just talking about a curious set of circumstances that you've been going through. And sometimes you just can't. But it's how we handle it. It's what we do inside that matters.
Yeah. And that, like, all the self-talk influences our emotions and our behaviors and things that we say and how we act. It is prevalent. And you can tell the people who have the more negative self-talk versus the people that have more positive self-talk. It's fascinating.
It is. It is. You can, in fact, as we're talking about this, the whole point of it is to bring awareness to the fact that this goes on. It's a natural thing. But what you just raised, you can see if you're sitting in a group of people, and for the most part, for me, that would happen in meetings. And back when it was we were all in the same place together. But you can see when somebody is giving in to a negative voice inside, that they're feeling the pressure of a criticism or a challenge to something, or they're fearful that it's about to come their way. You can see it physically,
for sure,
starting to take hold. I think then being aware of our physical responses, even if we don't think we've got that whole self-talk thing going, your body's telling you something. When you start to knot up, when you start to shrink away, you can just, for yourself, become aware of what, maybe you're not conscious of it, but your body is delivering a message.
The body keeps score.
You always have these awesome things that just, the body keeps score. Oh my gosh.
It really does. A question is popping in my head. Has your self-talk ever stopped you from doing something?
I can't say that it ever has. I've been fearful about going into something because of self-talk. I have not ever talked myself out of doing something just because of that unvoiced stuff. No, I don't think I ever have.
That's
How
awesome.
about you?
Yeah, I have. It's been a long time. I was probably in my early 20s, maybe. and I really wanted to be a singer. And I had an opportunity to do a really big gig, and I was like, the little voice of my 6th grade teacher in my head that told me I should never sing ever again got in my head, and I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do this.
Oh my gosh. And then you go on to be doing gigs for how many years? Jeez. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. But it's really interesting how that one comment from one person versus all the other people that were like, oh, you have a beautiful voice. That was the one that stuck in my head of, yeah, I'm probably not going to make it, so I'm not even going to try.
But that was a great school teacher.
Yep.
A great school teacher. You think about that. How many of these messages and these triggers were established back before we had fully developed senses of who we are and how we are and what mattered. I did that thing on Facebook about the whole generational piece. You don't, the years between 16 and 21 are where that starts to really get solid.
Yeah.
And before that, you're just trying to fit in, and you're taking cues from all of the authority figures around you. Gosh.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you figured out how to get past that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the only thing I vividly remember where it was, I talked myself right out of it. And for no other reason than that, just that negative self-talk on that one. But most of the time, like I said, it's pretty positive self-talk, and at worst it's neutral.
Okay.
But the grifter does appear every once in a while, not very often, but I've managed the grifters. So.
I think, again, I have to credit my mom, because there wasn't anything she wouldn't try and wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And she was nothing but supportive for whatever it was. And so I didn't learn about stopping myself.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking, though.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we need to? I would like to explore just one thing, is what, if any kind of, including journaling, what, if any kind of, I don't know, exercise or reflections could we do to help identify, acknowledge? We can't ignore it. It's there. Mm-hmm. So identify and acknowledge and learn from the self-talk, the things that are triggering us, and being able to turn it, if nothing else, to neutral.
Yeah.
To get into that practice.
Yeah, I think a couple things as you ask that question. I have coached people around this, and one of the questions, the techniques is this true? Is it helpful? And would I say this to a friend? Are some things that we can start to put in our internal dialogue when we notice that negative self-talk.
Okay.
Is it true? Is it true that I wasn't a good singer? No. Was it helpful? No. Mm-hmm. Would I ever say that to a friend, even if they did suck as a singer? Probably not. At least not in the manner it was said to me.
Yes. Yeah.
I might be like, you should probably sing in the shower. You have a beautiful voice for the shower by yourself.
You've got a great face for radio.
Yeah, exactly. And then just reframe the thought to something different that's more productive. Get it to neutral if you can. And then practice. Years ago, I wrote on my bathroom mirror, I am worthy. I just wrote some positive affirmations. So positive affirmations can help you shift out of that negative mindset. What would you add to that?
What I would add is that as I become aware of this negative thought going in, to be able to stop and say, okay, well, that is one way we could look at this. I don't choose that way anymore. Move on to something else, but to at least acknowledge it, because awareness, as in any 12-step program, awareness is the first step. So becoming aware of the things that are happening, and then taking conscious steps, even though they're in our heads, those conscious steps to say, okay, I heard you. Mm-hmm. Step aside. We're not going there anymore.
We're not doing this today.
No. That would be it.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. So as we wrap up this episode, I think this was a good conversation. I would ask the listener, when have you turned your self-talk around? How did you do it? And think about your self-talk. Is it more negative? Is it more neutral? Is it more positive? And if you're stuck in the negative, see what you can do to bump yourself up to a more neutral and more positive self-talk. Sometimes people will say, when I have the negative self-talk, to turn around, like you have to lie to yourself. And it's not about lying to yourself, but It is about reframing it to just be a little bit more positive or to feel a little bit better. So I like those questions of, is it true? Is it helpful? And would you say it to a friend?
What a wonderful way to end this 49th episode. I'm Carla Lewis.
I'm DocShellie. If you like what you hear, please share our podcast and give us a like. Talk to you later. I have coached people around this, and one of the techniques is this true? Is it helpful? And would I say this to a friend?